ingest. So Greg is going to show a little presentation about how he ingested some data. Again, a very simple way.
Yeah, I wish I had a more interesting demo, but like in this case, I had a file and that I downloaded off the internet, and it was 1.5 gigs CSV. You can imagine I can't open it in Excel, I can't open it in Notepad, and so and I don't want to store it on my machine, so I want to do some analytics with this file. So step one, I want to ingest it in my cloud. And the simplest way to do it is simply go to your file and upload it on the server. So that's what I did. Well, let's say it's a file that kind of got plopped out there every day or something like that. We can create, again, an Azure Data Factory job that would go to that folder, grab it, and then even dynamically place it into the file structure. So say I had Chicago data, and here I have 2017. You can imagine I had like a month and a day. So my daily ADF job runs every day, and it puts that file into the daily file or the daily folder for that particular data every day, and you kind of get it distributed, and then we can collect it all and make it analyzable later here when we talk about USQL.
Again, we're landing in the lake. We may not know what we want to do with it, but again, storage is pretty cheap, so let's collect it. Let's see what we can do with it.
But you might not want to store it as a 1.5 gig monster too. You might want to break it out. Like if my data scientists want to see, a month worth of data. The web logs they want to see is a month worth, and if they wanted to see a year, we can aggregate it down the line here when we build out our USQL jobs. Yeah, that's my boring thing. I'll say that.
So again, it's taking it, and then if you look at it here too, it's when you bring it up, is they should do a pretty good job of compressing it. So I think it went down to 72.
Well, yeah, that might not have uploaded the whole thing. So yeah.
And so it's really nice that, again, it makes storage a lot cheaper too. It doesn't take as much space. I just saw, again, off top, but I just saw a nice terabyte SSD hard drive that was about the size of less than a deck of playing cards. I could not believe it. So then we say, okay, well, now that we have this unstructured data and it's stored somewhere, what if we actually now want to combine it? So like a lot of things that I've seen when we always talk about big data, and again, that nice unicorn that never I've ever seen or implemented, is, well, how does it work? It's going to overtake data. It's going to know more relational data. It's all going to be all this. Oh, why do you have a star schema anymore? That's what people used to think, but it's more about how do you combine it and how do you use it together. So the way we keep seeing things is, again, is you're not going to be using structured data and unstructured data separately. It's how do you use that business case to combine them together and make sense of it. So in our first small demo, we had that structured date where that was, again, structured and modeled. Now it is unstructured, that we want to now give it a schema. Like Greg said, is when we bring this in, there's no schema to it. It's just there. So what we want to now do is make some business sense, so we have to define this schema. And what we're doing too now is with that load is we're defining that schema when we pull it out, not when we put it in. A lot of times, like you said, you're landing in an on-prem SQL Server database or some other database in the cloud on a VM. You know what that looks like. We are now telling it, hey, here's what we want it to look like when we pull it out. So you can, again, have many other use cases for many different ways for why you need to use this data. And we use the term catalog to say, hey, we want to catalog this data and tell it where it wants to go and how it's supposed to look. And once we do that, we're kind of building that business layer to say, hey, now you can make sense, and we can hopefully use you by combining you with our other structured named catalog data.
Okay. So actually I'm going to go ahead and pull it up in Studio. So here in Studio I've connected to my Azure Data Lake store, and I want to do some transformations. I want to catalog my data. And so this is the transformation step of the data lake, for lack of a better terminology. Yeah. So first thing I wanted to note is you can kind of programmatically build where you're pointing your code. So all of a sudden, like I put our Chicago crime data, but I grabbed it, say, once a year. So maybe I have 15 different files that are over 15 different folders. Well, now I can define maybe a specific year. You can imagine creating like a loop that pulls things out and aggregates it all together. The point is you can grab this disparate data programmatically. The second thing I want to point out here is that this is where I'm giving it schema. So in the underlying file, it's a CSV. I can see what the columns are. Perhaps I'm familiar with the metadata of this file that I downloaded, or maybe you just kind of had to figure it out. But now this is where the rubber actually hits the road, and I create that schema. Do you have a question?
Yeah. So what happens if you have a CSV file that's like, say it's a 2 gig file, and the schema is like, the schema might be like it's not always valid, right? Like you have extra commas or stuff like that. I mean, normally you could write like a simple bash script or PowerShell or something like that to like detect those types of errors. Can you do that in Visual Studio, or how would you go about kind of making that?
I mean,
because you can't open it up in a notepad, right? It's too big to. What would you?
Right. Like I have played around with like changing the formats of files to make them work. Like I might have originally downloaded as a CSV, and there were extra commas, places that were screwing things up. So when I actually ingressed it into the data lake, I brought it as like a tab separated thing with totally different. So I split the columns out differently. If the underlying file is kind of structurally flawed, that's going to make it difficult to pull any sort of schema out of it. But as far as like, this doesn't quite work as a comma separated file, well, you have actually a few different options of, it's called the extractor. You can extract data as different formats. So when you ingest, you might try putting it in some sort of custom format, and then you can extract it in that same custom format. It might solve your problems. That's just a suggestion of, there might be other tools out there. I don't know, is anybody familiar with kind of like a data grouping tool in ADLA analytics? I imagine a lot of that stuff is going to be coming out, because that kind of problem makes a lot of sense that we were going to run into. But again, this kind of goes back to...
Is there something that you bring up your own library when you create your libraries, or something you could do to bring in functions that would do that for you?
Yeah, I mean, one thing to point out here, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the presentation. I'm sorry, where was I? Well, here, let me keep going, because I am going to get to another interesting thing where we can kind of incorporate C# into extracting and transforming our codes. Might be interesting. So another thing I wanted to point out here is the output of this file doesn't have to be anything. Like I said, it could be a custom format for a file. I created this .out. It's totally meaningless. I happen to output it here as a CSV, but I didn't have to do that as far as these outputter functions. So real fast, I wanted to point out something that might seem a little odd in what otherwise looks like a SQL statement. Is here I've got my date column, and I've created a toString and then a date format. And I'm creating a date key based off of my date column. But toString had to recognize that, right? Well, what is this? This is actually C# code. And what these files are actually doing is it's referencing underlying C# libraries that you can then incorporate into your USQL. So I think that's pretty cool if you think about it. I was joking with our custom app person that we all might as well learn .NET, because we might be doing a lot of our ETL kind of work in high-level .NET-like languages going forward, which is kind of crazy to think about.
So I said combining IS and IT now.
Yeah.
Now, all right, if you throw in C# at this point, do you have to build a separate library and install it on the server in order to have it be accessible within SQL? Or is it just in line?
Oh, I mean, I'm just using default libraries. I assume if you write your own libraries...
Well, I mean, if you write a function to take the comma out, for example, simple, right? Do you have to build that into a library before you can use it? Or
no, I mean, here's the namespace for this particular UScript job. I would imagine you could create that user-defined function or class or whatever, all within this name. But then if you wanted to reuse it across multiple UScript jobs, it might make sense to put it into a library and include it. I'm sorry, I'm not as much of a high-level language, so excuse me if .NET is not exactly my expertise. So maybe some .NET people might be able to answer that question better, or maybe it was okay answer. see some people shaking their heads. Yeah.
We're learning though, that's the thing that we have to learn now is from our custom app guys is there's only 2 of them in our shop, but there's gonna be many more because it's where it's going.
Sorry about that. Another thing I want to point out is when we talk about cataloging data, you can actually create these kind of SQL-S structures within the data lake. So if you wanted to create what I'm calling the data hub database and then the business schema, and then I create this table called the crime table, and then I can load, rather than here I'm outputting it to a CSV, but here I'm inserting it into this catalog table that I created. Now, quick warning, I don't think we're quite at the point where we're creating like operational data lakes. You know, I have an operational data store that I might move data around and have defined schemas, and that might make a lot of sense. I don't think we're quite at the point where we're building out kind of big databases, but this is a really cool way, I think, to make data load ready. So you can imagine if I'm a tool that's going to pull from this lake, now I have kind of a schema-looking table, even though this isn't really I'm just kind of defining a row set. I don't know technically how this works, but how I imagine is the data is still underlying, it's still in its flat files, it's still in all its individual folders, but Azure Data Lake Analytics has used this job to give it meaning and schema for tools like ADF to come and pull data out of the lake easily. Does that make sense? I think it's pretty cool.
This is what feeds into data reservoir.
Is what? I'm sorry.
Data reservoir.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we're still at the point where big data, like if I had a petabyte of data, like, we'll talk a little bit about pricing later, but like kind of that standard tier, like $450 a month Azure SQL database is like $450 a month, right? This is a terabyte is $35 a month. So if you have a lot of data, you can dump it into that lake. However, where you spend money is when you start doing the use script jobs. So this may not be 100% accurate, but the way I think of it is you're spending money on storage when you're working with the RDBMS in the cloud, and you're spending money on analytics when you're working with the data lake. And maybe that's not quite accurate, but that's kind of maybe. I see you kind of making a face. Maybe you don't agree with that.
So the charges for analytics company is the compute resources, your analytics jobs and consume.
Yeah, I'm literally Microsoft. Not defend Microsoft people, but they have these bullshit units for everything. So there's the DTUs for SQL Server database. There's the AUs, which is analytical units here in the data lake cloud, and there's DWUs when you're working with the warehouse. And they all kind of mean different things, but it makes it a little more difficult to kind of do one-to-one comparisons in terms of cost. But we're consultants, so our clients care about their money spend. So
But the thing is, it's usually much cheaper than the infrastructure and else you would buy for that spend. The total cost of ownership is usually still much cheaper. So it's still right now kind of that black box. Whereas again, AWS is a lot more, not in its infancy, it's a lot more mature, so it can say, hey, here's a pricing structure. Microsoft is still figuring it out, I believe. They're still figuring out how do we charge it, how do we scale it, who's using it, how do we grab all the power of this stuff. And again, like I said, Power BI, in 2 years, I guarantee it's going to be a lot easier, and they're actually nailed down, hey, here's our 5 offerings, here's what we have. There's still a lot of overlap right now, and I can see that there's a lot of overlap with the units and how you calculate things, and where the spend comes is going to become a lot clearer, I think, in the next year or two.
yeah, that's kind of the end of that demo. So any more questions around SQL and
Is that something you run locally?
so you can submit jobs from your machine, and you can create local environments to do debugging and things like that.
So does
So
this
yes.
code that you wrote, do you publish that to Azure?
Yeah, so I've created, this is 2017, and they have Azure Data Lake tools that allow you to create SQL projects. And so I can connect here with my I don't know if I have internet connection problems, but usually I can connect to my data store and find my data and submit my NewSQL jobs. And you can also, I believe, use like ADF to call jobs if you were, say, to want to do it programmatically.
It's what you just talked about. Is that considered a pull? Are you pulling it off of an external server, or are you pushing it onto the cloud? Like, where is it? Is it running on
So
a local
NewSQL
box and getting pushed, or is it?
So no, this data is in the data lake, and I'm using NewSQL
Okay.
to create transformations
So it's already
within the
in there.
data lake.
Okay. So I'm thinking of like the prior slide where you're ingesting,
Yes.
right? How do you like? And you mentioned the 2 GB file, and what if you had to do it every day? I let the question go by, but so how do you do that? I mean, how would you automate something like that, loading a file every day? I mean, would it be a pull?
Yeah, you create an Azure Data Factory pipeline, which would point at where your file is going to land every day, or where it exists every day, and you write a script that will pull that data, select star, create a data set based off of that data, a copy activity, and this is all in JSON again, into your data store, and you can dynamically define the folders in your destination, right? So if you wanted to create some date-based file hierarchy for your web logs that you pull every day, you could kind of do that within your Azure Data Lake store.
Right.
So then it's like, okay, I want to see the web logs for yesterday. It's going to be in this particular folder, right? And there's lots of questions I think still around monitoring and making sure all these jobs work and say merge it. Like I've been working a lot with this idea of kind of staging data and really CDC in the cloud, and that's why I kind of warn against doing more of an operational database or attempting an operational database in the data lake, because just the level of sophistication of the tools in Azure SQL Server there's still a significant gap there, I think. And maybe in a couple of years, having an operational data lake might be more reasonable.
Actually, copies and previews, things like that, things that you expect you could very easily do are still, again, not completely there yet. But they will be, and like I said, if you use SQL Server and SSIS, it used to be DTS, so it's pretty much just writing stored procedures all over the place. And then you got
The example I think you're looking for,
What was that?
the example I think you're looking for is instead of just pulling it in to a data store that's
Yeah.
structured data, the example I've seen has been pulling things off an FTP site. That's one
Yeah.
big, huge text file each day, and you take that and you write a job, and Azure Automation and Data Factory pulls it into your data lake on a daily basis.
Okay.
But I mean, the thing I emphasize, storage is cheap.
Mhm.
You know, an ERP is 500 gig. You can copy that 10 times over, and you've only spent it's $35 a terabyte. I mean,
Yeah. And so again, we'll talk about spend and where you pull that spend. So now we said, okay, well now we've got all this structured data, we've got a schema, we've got all this unstructured that we've now, what we call cataloged it, and now we can actually say, hey, how do we combine this and make some use of it? And when we do that, we can actually say, hey, look, just like any other visualization tool in your on-prem database, it has to be structured. If it's not structured properly, you can't get any good analytics from it. So now that we've had these two different data sources, they're structured, cataloged, they've got a schema, we can combine them together now in, again, our database as a service, and actually, hey, let's pump it into our Azure SQL database, or data warehouse.
yeah. So I didn't bother creating another demo of the Azure Data Factory, but you can imagine I have a factory that has two activities. One that copies from my structured database, so my business layer in my structured database, and pulls it to my data warehouse, and one that copies from this load-ready cataloged data or from my data lake. And now I'm going to take those two things and I'm going to pull it into Azure Data Warehouse. Now, Azure Data Warehouse is a service that pretty much has tons and tons of storage. You can dump as much information in there as you can, but what you pay for is performance. And I think this is really cool because essentially, and I can actually bring it up here in the portal.
Just performance, storage cost is the cost of this compared to.
Yeah. Very true.
But-
Minimum of 60 compute nodes is also enough. So, Azure SQL data warehouse is very expensive.
Yeah, and that's why I said is a lot of this again is still there because it's that you need that use case for it. You need a reason to do it. Is you're not going to massively have parallel processing in an HDFS to just say, hey, let me crunch some numbers and data, a couple million rows. You would really have to have a use case.
What I like is you can dynamically adjust your
don't
warehouse.
Too much apply this.
Can I just
Yeah.
want to answer the question
Yeah,
I just asked there? One thing I would say is, you start looking at the data warehouse, yes, the compute is expensive, you spin up a lot of compute, but you can pause it. Right? So at that point, then you are paying for premium storage, but you can pause it and store it that way. Another thing you can do is, if in the data warehouse, the way we tell you to load the warehouse is using Polybase. I don't know if you look at Polybase, but Polybase allows us to send T-SQL statements at a SQL engine and talk to the data, and we can also, with the DW, we can interact with the data lake. So one of the things you could do is, if you've got a project and instead of just, let's say you were gonna pause the data warehouse for, you do some loading, maybe you do a month-end processing or something on it, right? Take that data, using Polybase, you can spit it back out into the lake in whatever shape you want, and then tear down the warehouse. And then you're not paying either the premium storage cost or the data warehouse space, and when it's time to start analyzing again, spin it all back up on demand. So you've got those kind of capabilities in
Then
it.
it can come on
Cre- cre-
and then reload the data
Yeah.
warehouse.
But I mean, depending on how much, I mean,
I think the use case, the coolest part about these data warehouses, in my mind, is like you said, you can pause it when you're not. Like I imagine I'm a manager